Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larby.
Hart, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm excited. So Rent Panda, for those of you that may not know, is a multifaceted rental opportunity for investors and landlords to work together. But I'll let you talk about that a little bit more. But I think we originally connected a couple years ago, and you were starting to build the brand, and it's really incredible to see how far you've come and that good stuff. So for those that may not know about Rent Panda and what you do, what is it that you offer?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll dive into it, and it'll be a little bit long-winded, but I'll first say thank you for having me. And I think to a testament to probably 5 years ago when we first came across, the Sarah Larby podcast and everything that you do, we were like, we're going to be on this podcast one day. So it is good to see that we are finally there and we've reached that level of success. But when we first started Rent Panda, we were a tech company, and Rent Panda still provides technology for the do-it-yourself landlord. So if you're a landlord that's getting out there that wants to list their property, manage it themselves, do everything from start to finish, Rent Panda is a service where you can provide, or you can get software to do that type of thing. So you can post your property, you can find tenants, you can screen those tenants, you can build your leases, you can get some property management light services. And then for the scaling landlord or the busy landlord, we provide leasing services. So we have regional leasing specialists across all of Ontario now, hopefully soon to be across Canada, where we can actually come in and do white glove leasing. So we do a walkthrough of the property, we provide you with a rent assessment, define tenant profiles, photos, videos. We handle all of the marketing and advertising. We do all of the pre-screening of applicants and conduct all of the showings in person ourselves. We do all of the post-showing screenings, and we'll talk about tenant screening in a little bit, I'm sure. Build out the leases for you, make sure first and last is paid, and hand over a high-quality tenant at the end of the day. So if you're a landlord that's still self-managing but doesn't have the time to find their own tenant or is scared of finding their own tenant in this marketplace here in Ontario, we can do that for you. And then recently we launched our full service property management offering across all of Ontario as well. So typical of property management companies, we collect rent, we handle all the day-to-day communications, all of the repairs and maintenance, notices, so you can be a truly passive landlord and scale. And Rent Panda as a brand is really about stewarding the journey of small landlords. I'm a small landlord myself and an investor myself, and we found that 10 years ago, there was a wild west of rentals. There wasn't a lot of service out there for small landlords like us. And so we really wanted to be there for the small landlord, whether you are still a do-it-yourselfer or you're a scaling successful landlord. Rent Panda was there with a service that could help you out.
That is cool. I mean, you don't forget a name like Rent Panda. But it is cool that you guys are actually doing a little bit of everything, right? So if somebody wants to be half hands-on, maybe with a management piece, but they don't have the time to screen, find tenants, or they may not know how to do it also, right? And they want to have somebody that understands the systems and the processes to screen tenants out that may not, be ideal, all the way from the software piece. So I think it's good that you have different pieces of it. So I'm just curious though, when you first started, versus today, because we're all entrepreneurs and we're business owners, and it sounds like you obviously got your investments as well as a landlord. But how did the whole business pivot? Because it's a business on its own.
Yep.
It's a big business. You guys are growing and you're expanding across the country. But what did it originally start at, and walk us through the pivoting that you've had to do along the way?
Yeah, for sure. So the inception story of Rent Panda is a fun one because I started the business with my brother up in Thunder Bay, actually. I was in Toronto working in advertising. He was a newly graduated PhD, moved up to Thunder Bay, and had a really, really hard time finding a rental. And as a tenant, he just thought there had to be a better way, that cliche moment of inspiration. But there was actually a website called Home Sweet Homes up in Thunder Bay And the way that people were primarily finding rentals was on this website where you would view a list of properties, a list of addresses. You would then e-transfer the owner of that website $20 or $25, and he would send you a Word document of the listings in town. And that website, about 10 years ago, had 70 to 80% of all the listings in town. And this is 10 years ago. This is not that long ago. And that was the way that people were finding rentals. So we thought there had to be a better software solution to this rental marketplace. And, Facebook Marketplace was there, but it wasn't doing as much as it was today. And there was, viewit.ca in Toronto. And that was like the pinnacle of rental marketplaces, which to this day isn't the best marketplace out there, but it still exists.
Yeah.
And so we thought there had to be a better software solution. And we wanted to be a tech company. We built a prop tech. We went out for, investment. We talked to VCs. We did that whole roadshow. We got a little bit of investment, but as we started to get into the marketplace, we really felt it was always important to talk to landlords. And for the first 5 years, we actually offered free photography for every single person that listed on the website. And for context, listing on the website was free. So we would actually, for free, go out and put a lawn sign on someone's lawn and take free photography for them, because the experience of talking to those landlords was so important, and digesting all of their pain points. And you can imagine the thousands of conversations that we had. It was the best market research you could ever do. It cost us a lot of money and time, but we realized that not only were software solutions in need, but services were in need. There were those landlords that were scared of finding the wrong tenant or had placed the wrong tenant before. So we actually spun off the leasing division of the company to just help place tenants, because we were seeing applications every day through the system. We knew what a good tenant and a bad tenant was. We were seeing where people were falling down. So we thought we could do this in a more, premium style, and be hands-on for those landlords that didn't want to do it themselves. And then once we started filling properties for people, they said, great, you filled an awesome tenant. I don't want to have to deal with the tenant at all, right? If something goes bad, I don't want to deal with that 2:00 in the morning phone call about the leaky toilet. So we started a property management division of the company. We started to manage properties. But really, we just started to say yes to a lot of the things that we didn't do before we did them, and built the business in that way. And so we said yes to leasing. We said yes to property management. We hired a paralegal as a paralegal/property manager. So now we were able to actually do paralegal services for people. And everything that we've built has been a product of what's fed back to us. So we've really just built and done what landlords have asked of us. And, there's no real unique thoughts out there. We've done a little bit of unique thinking, but ultimately we're just trying to service the small landlord population here in Ontario, soon to be across the country, with all of the pain points that they're experiencing. And I think that's been a journey over the last few years. There's been new pain points that have arisen. There's been a lot more rental scams these days. There's been a lot more professional tenants. The vacancy rates are dropping, rents are going up. And so some people think it's easier to find tenants now because the pool of tenants is greater, but that actually makes it more time consuming, potentially harder. And we see fraudulent documentation all day, every day. So we're always kind of thinking forward to what's the next tool, what's the next service, what's the next thing that landlords really need to help make their journey a little bit better.
That's awesome. So I've been using your screening and your staff as well. And it's nice that you essentially you screen a lot of people behind the scenes, and you're like, here are like the top candidates, or here are the ones that like we've approved. Do you want to move forward with that person or not? But so let's just say, for example, there's somebody here that's thinking, okay, like and you're currently doing quite a bit of units for us as well. But I think there is going to be, it's either you don't have enough time, or you may not have the skills and the resources and the knowledge to do it properly. And I think that's where you would come in as Rent Panda, right? So like somebody like me, for example, if we have 20 units to fill pretty much in a matter of like 3-4 months, as they trickle in, with everything else that I have going on, like I just can't. So you're kind of overseeing that. But I think the other piece of it, like for my, perspective, and a client of yours as well, is that not only do I not have time to do it, I also trust that I don't have to be hands-on and verify and triple check and I basically like your process because it's very similar to my process. And I know we've talked about this in the past, where you know, a lot of the checks that I would do, and it does take time to go through the whole tenant process, even once they apply, that I know that it's done, you know, to my liking essentially. So maybe just walk us through like what that looks like. So, you know, if somebody comes, maybe they're either not experienced, they don't know, or they have a ton of units. Like, what is it that you do with, you know, let's just call it a 4-unit property, which I think you've got a handful of them from us right now.
Yeah. So the first most important step is a walkthrough of those properties. And so the way that we've structured our team and the way that we've been able to be across the province is we hire local team members so that they understand the local dynamics. And, you know, a rental in Welland is very different than a rental in Hamilton, in Toronto, and in Thunder Bay. And it's different in multiple ways. So that walkthrough of the property allows us to bring that local regional leasing specialist in and provide a rent assessment first and foremost. A lot of people, and not speaking badly upon realtors, but a lot of people have been misadvised in terms of the rent that you can get in a property, especially when you're trying to move properties quickly. And so rents have, you know, gone up, they've been inflated. We want to get in there and provide an accurate rent assessment based on market dynamics, based on comparables across multiple platforms. So we're going to come in there and do a rent assessment. We're also going to provide a tenant profile. You know, tenant profiles, as an investor, you always want to say, I want AAA tenants or quote unquote AAA tenants. I want the best of the best. But sometimes you bought a property that may attract B+ tenants, and that's okay. As long as you understand that, you know, you're okay with B+ tenants, you can still screen them in a different way, but in a fulfilling way. So that tenant profile is really, really important to do. We take photos and videos of the unit. Accurate photos and videos are the best thing that you can do for marketing a property. You know, you don't want beautifully blown out realtor.ca photos that are going to mislead people, because ultimately it's going to waste your time at the end of the day. People are going to show up at the unit and go, this is not what, you know, it actually looks like. So we want accurate photos. We want high quality video, because most marketplaces now defer to video format in terms of getting reach for your ad. And then we're going to, you know, advertise the property on multiple listings. So although we have our own marketplace, we're not the type of company that solely relies on our own marketplace. We're very real in the sense that Facebook Marketplace gets the majority of traction across all of Ontario. Kijiji is still a platform that garners a little bit of interest. Zumper is gaining traction these days. You know, in certain markets, Rent Panda is the dominant one, but not in all. So we want to make sure that we're across all platforms, that we can be everywhere, and ultimately get the most volume through the door as possible, regardless of quality of tenant, and then use our screening systems to really funnel down the high quality tenants. And like you said, 99% of the screening happens behind the scenes. So you as an investor don't have to deal with it. And we're going to pre-screen people through messaging. We're going to pre-screen them through essentially pre-applications before they come through for showings. We're going to be at every single showing gathering qualitative information about those people, which is incredibly, incredibly important. We're very against the realtor way of doing things, where you throw a lockbox on and let someone else's realtor bring them through the property, because you lose all of the qualitative elements of, you know, how does someone look? How does someone smell? Do they offer to take off their shoes when they come in? Do they listen to your instructions to call them upon arrival versus knocking on the door? You know, maybe the place is tenanted and you've asked them to park on the street and they whip into the driveway and block the current tenants in. So all of those intangibles are really important. So we attend all of those showings and we gather that qualitative information. And then post showing, we've already called down the list from, you know, thousands of people who've seen the ads to hundreds of messages to maybe, you know, a dozen or two showings. And then we can really start to dive into our quantitative analysis. So that's credit checks and background checks that we pull directly. We never accept any credit check or background check from a tenant that has been unverified by us, because we've seen, you know, tons and tons of fraudulent documentation. There are now companies out there and individuals out there who will pay, like you can pay to create that fraudulent documentation for you, and they're now easy to find. So it's absolutely crazy out there. You want to pull your own credit checks and background checks. We do income and expense verification. So that's done through an open bank check. So we can actually see income coming into a tenant's account, whether it's payroll, government income, e-transfers, gig economy workers. And then we can actually see rent expenses going out or other expenses going out. So if someone says, you know, I don't have any pets, and they're shopping at Pet Value once a month, it's probably the case that they have a pet. And not saying anything good or bad about pet owners, but if you have a rental in a condo that has a pet bylaw, you want, transparency from that tenant.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can also do ID verification. We check Canly and Open Room to make sure there are no judgments against that person. We scrape social media to make sure there's nothing, generally inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do kind of our old school stuff. So we arrange for a Zoom call to make sure that we talk to the person in their actual home. And, typically when someone's on Zoom, you can see their background.
Yeah.
If they have a digital background, so be it.
Yeah.
But we can actually talk to them, engage with them, see their background. We call their past landlords, and we actually, make sure that on Geo Warehouse, they are a landlord or an owner. If they're a property management company, we're going to dig deeper and make sure we're calling, the property management line, not the phone number of the person that they gave us, their uncle or their aunt or their best friend who's pretending to be their landlord. And really all of these checks are meant to, cross the T's and dot the I's, but do it 2 or 3 times over so that if there are any inconsistencies, we can reveal them. And, professional tenants are good, but they don't have bulletproof systems that can't be seen through. So we've never placed a professional tenant. We've done well over 1,300 leases now, and we've had 1 non-payment of rent, which got resolved through our paralegal within 3 months with a payment plan. So it's just a situation that happens, you get non-payment of rent.
Yeah.
But really, all of our efforts go into screening so that when we provide those recommendations to you, and that's the next step, we do our screening and we provide those recommendations, we know that anyone we recommend is a quality tenant. And the thing is, sometimes it takes longer.
Mm-hmm.
So we always deal in this triangle that we talk our clients through of, the quality of tenant, the price of the rental, and the time it will take to rent it out.
Yeah.
And so if you're an investor that's like, hey, just picked up a property, don't care if it's slightly under market rent, but I need a tenant in there tomorrow because I've got a mortgage payment coming up, we can advise you on the quality of tenant and the time it'll take based on the price. If you're a landlord that's like, hey, I want to push market rents, I want absolute top dollar, but I don't mind on sitting, with a vacancy for a month or 2. Maybe we're looking for a refi, maybe we're looking at, commercial leases in place. So everyone has a different strategy as an investor.
Mm-hmm.
And as a leasing service or a property management company, we want to make sure that we understand your goal. We want to understand what you want to get out of that property. We want to understand, the factors that are putting pressure on you so that we can run with those same factors.
That's great.
And then, once those recommendations, come through,
Yeah.
we put the leases together. We have our paralegals. So we put through a bomb-proof lease appendix. Those are all of those clauses like not allowing for Airbnb arbitrage in your property, or not allowing for, the growing of marijuana on the property, even though the government says that's okay. All of these clauses, use of common spaces that will really go to protect your property, protect you, but set the tenant up for success as well. And a lot of landlords forget that the tenant is a stakeholder. The tenant is probably your most important stakeholder at the end of the day, especially for small landlords that are dealing with a couple properties. Good tenants will make or break your business. So we want to make sure that we look after both interests, and then we can hand over a really high quality tenant to a self-managing landlord so that they don't end up getting into trouble down the line.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love the process. One of the things I want to go back to, I mean, you said lots of great things, but one of the things that I think is very different is that you actually are able to pull Geo Warehouse showing who owns the property, and it should likely be the landlord's name, or maybe it's an Ontario limited number or something along those lines. And I think that's a great check. And then the other thing too, like you mentioned Canly, you mentioned Open Room. I think it's just important that everybody checks that all the time, because that's where, all of the court cases come up and get posted, and you can likely, avoid putting a really bad person in there potentially, or somebody like, here's the thing, to each their own. But I think if somebody's gone through the courts, regardless of what the decision is, for me personally, I don't, that's probably disqualifying in my own, personal view. I also like that you are doing the social media check. And one of the things that, I do a lot of as well right now is, obviously if you guys are doing it, it's fine. But if I'm doing it somewhere else, as an example, I like to go to like the Landlord and Tenants of Ontario group, where they have like 51,000 people. I just want to search that person's name to see what they said, or what they're, or even if they are in that group. So like all those like pro landlord or pro tenant groups that like tell each other what to do in order to play the system. I want to make sure they're not in there. So, like you found us some good tenants so far, and we're super happy. So question though for you, because like obviously we've got, Jack as an example, who does our Hamilton stuff. And then we have Chris who does our Welland stuff. Like, how do you ensure that, everywhere across the country as you're going, these folks that you hire on are going to have the same quality checks, the same process as you would want from your head office?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's one that is solved with systems, essentially. So, back in the day, I used to give a presentation to landlords on systems for rental success and building out their systems with our software. And ultimately, as leasing specialists, each individual leasing specialist isn't on their own, and it's unlike a brokerage triaging out a lead to a realtor who then runs their systems. And yes, they're using ORIA forms and whatnot, but the realtor is the realtor. With us, whether you're working with Chris or Jack or Daniel or Constance or whoever it ends up being, yes, you're dealing with an individual and they may have a different style, but everything that they do is the Rent Panda system. So we have, I think it's a 27-page leasing process right now. Nice. That everyone walks through. And it's just itemized. It's following a system, following a process. And there are going to be outlier situations for sure. But we have a team of 22 leasing specialists now. I've personally been doing this for 10 years. Our senior team has been doing this for a very long time. And so when the outliers come up, we can not only enhance our process and to fill those outliers, we can deal with the situation firsthand. So really, no matter who you're working with, they're running through the Rent Panda systems. That process that I just walked you through, that's followed by every single leasing specialist. We have 3 times a week statuses with everyone to make sure everyone's on track. We have weekly updates that go out to our clients. Some clients want updates every 2 days. Some clients just say, let me know when you're done. Right. So we always want to adapt to the person, but we want it to be the Rent Panda way of doing things. And even when we speak, it's a lot less of the I. It's not Chris saying, hey, I did this and I did that. It's we. And if someone's sick, if someone quits, if someone changes the way that they're approaching things, the Rent Panda team is there to step in and support each other. And as a business owner, I think it's important to never lose sight of rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty. And a lot of the most successful investors have done this. Property management company screws up, you roll up your sleeves, you get in, you fix things, and then you get a new property management company maybe. But really getting your hands dirty. And I've driven out from Toronto to Kingston or Toronto down to Welland or flown up to Thunder Bay to fix issues when things have gone wrong. And so when you're working with Rent Panda, you're working with Rent Panda as an entity, Rent Panda as an organization, and all of those strong individuals who work for us make us as a collective better. But you, Sarah, as an individual investor, aren't necessarily just left to Chris on his own and his leasing capabilities.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. And I do for me, I know you guys do the weekly updates, so you'll have how many leads you got, how many people, walk through, applied, all that stuff. So you can actually see. And then it's usually good too, because then you'll also add, what I like is comps, right? Here are the comps that came out for that week that you're also competing against now. I think that's good. And good insights, even just on comments that the tenants go through and they say, okay, well, this and this would be great if that could be changed, or I don't like it because of this reason or whatnot. So I think that's good feedback, good insight as well. So you have that. Now, are you, you mentioned Ontario, if I'm in Ottawa or I'm in the Sioux, or are you covered? Do you have coverage in all those areas?
Yep. Okay. So I'll say very transparently, we do have a couple small holes, but we haven't yet seen kind of enough volume to be there. And we've probably had to say no to 1 or 2 landlords. Timmins is a good example where we're in Thunder Bay, we're in Sault Ste. Marie, we're in North Bay, we're in Sudbury. But Timmins right now, we've only heard of 1 or 2 investors who have properties there that we unfortunately had to say no to. That being said, we're actively looking for someone in Timmins to represent us as our team member. Okay. So we've been filling holes quite quickly. And the way that we position our team is that we're regionally specialized, essentially. So we have 1 team member in Durham who can do Ajax, Whitby, Pickering, and if he needs to cover, drive out to Cobourg or drive up to Peterborough, it's not the worst thing in the world. And in that way, we have all of these kind of arcs of regional specialists that can cover each other, but also specialize within their region. The Niagara region is a good example where Welland, St. Catharines, Thorold, Niagara, they're all, commutable one to the other. So one person can cover that. But if need be, a Hamilton leasing specialist can drive down to Welland to do some showings, and it's not the worst thing in the world for us as a team. So yeah, it's been a challenge from the HR side of things for sure. As a business owner, like we said beforehand, we thought about running a technology company and thought about managing developers and managing designers and product managers and things like that. Managing people on the ground in the real estate space is very, very different because it's much more of a people-based business. And I think the big realization for us is we pivoted from a prop tech to a tech-enabled real estate company, because in this real estate space, I fundamentally think people want to deal with people. People really like partnering with good people, knowing there are human beings there that have their back, that understand their motivation to be in real estate, their motivation to build generational wealth and have passive investments, and want to know that someone who lives here, breathes here, and understands the rental market has their back. So that's where we've really tried to push hard and work with the best software providers, build the right software ourselves, but work with the best people on our team to provide the best level of service.
Absolutely. And now as a business owner, this is more of a business question based on, how you structure it. Are your staff that are doing, those regions, are they employed by you as employees full time? Or are they contractors? Or are they kind of just invoicing you based on the time? And then they might have like a part-time gig or something else that they do as well to make money?
All of the above.
Okay.
So we've gone through various cycles of Rent Panda's staffing structures, I should say. So at the start, everyone was employees. We were a tech company. Everyone had to be employees, and the burn rates were quite high. You have to spend money to make money, and we were pushing a lot of free products. And so we were the kind of that typical prop tech where you knew you were burning a lot more than you had coming through the door. You were going to be non-profitable for a while, and you were just going to raise money to keep the doors open and keep moving forward at tech level speeds. That became quite tiresome, and as a business owner, it was very stressful running that type of business. And we found that the service-based offering was not only more profitable, but was the product and the demand was there for that type of thing. So as we shifted more into the service-based offering, we still had employees who were working for us, but then we started to bring on essentially commission-based contractors. So depending on the region, we have people who are doing 2 to 3 contracts a month. We have people doing 8 to 10 contracts a month, and we have people who are flat out 15 to 20 contracts a month. And so when we're at that level of scale, we can bring people on as employees. We can bring people on as full-time contractors. We can bring people on as part-time contractors. But ultimately, regardless of what their commission structure is, essentially, they have to run through the same systems. They run through the same training. They run through the same Rent Panda, tech systems, and they have the same level of service standards that we have for anyone else. So as kind of the hard-nosed business owner, I don't really care if you have 3 side gigs and that's the way that you make money. The clients need to have that same level of care. Everyone needs to be treated as if they were our only client. And, sometimes contractors are better, sometimes employees are better. But ultimately, it really depends on the region and how much demand there is for our service.
Awesome. As you were talking, I actually got an application from you guys.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I'll take a look at it after. But
and,
no,
I mean, a testament to that one, I'll say, we can just riff and spin on that one. But we were trialing some new showing systems that came to light a couple of weeks ago. And so we tested out the system, and we had a higher volume of inquiries coming through. And, some of those properties, Sarah, we're moving a little bit slower. We were trying different tactics to move them. And all of a sudden we found traction with one. And so we started to push that hard. And I think it's a testament to always having a keen eye for innovation within the space, because the platform that's, the right one in the GTA is not the right one in Welland. And the type of applicants that are coming through are very different. And the way that, people are open to technology, right? Like in Thunder Bay, if we said to a tenant in Thunder Bay, let me do an open bank check and look into your bank account, we would be pointed at with one finger, and it's not the thumb. But if we do that in Toronto, people are like, sure, here's all my information, here's my SIN number, here's the name of my firstborn. Like, people are willing to do whatever it takes to get a rental. So being on that cusp of innovation allows us to pivot and to get properties moved faster, to, innovate consistently and ultimately keep our clients happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good. So that's the tenant screening side. Now that is what, 1 month's rent plus HST or tax or whatever taxes
Yeah.
road as you expand out of Ontario.
Yeah. Right now, 1 month's rent plus HST. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So that's
that encompasses the entire service. So, there's no charge for extra marketing, extra advertising. It doesn't matter if we have to screen, 5 people with credit checks and background checks or 55 people and pay for all of those. That's that fixed fee. And, we build in all of those lease documents, make sure tenant's insurance is in place, make sure utility transfer is done. We're there up until the end when we hand over that tenant to you.
awesome. So that's the tenant screening piece. And then you also now added the property management, as probably I'm guessing, because usually there's not a whole lot of money in property management in general, just to help landlords continue with being hands off if needed. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So that's exactly right. We had enough landlords coming to us and saying, I'm scaling my portfolio. I love the leasing service, but I want to be an investor, right? I don't want to be a landlord. I want to be an investor. So, I like Rent Panda. Can you just manage my property for me? And for us, the leasing service being Ontario wide was really important because, like yourself, a lot of our investors aren't select in a specific area. We've got people living in Toronto, invested in Thunder Bay, Windsor, and Kingston. So we want to be able to follow our investors so that they can use a service that they trust, use a brand that they trust, and we can encompass, their entire portfolio. So the property management was the next step in being able to help them in their journey. So the way that looks for us is we've kind of done away with the percentage of monthly rent as a fee structure. As an investor myself, I don't think it's really fair for a property management company to say, hey, I'm going to charge you a percentage of monthly rent, but when your rent goes up every year, my fees are going to go up. And you've got a more expensive property, so I'm going to make more money. The inverse is probably true, where less expensive properties are actually the more difficult ones to manage. I'll take a $5,000 luxury home rental in Oakville any day over a basement in Welland. That being said, we need to be transparent about what we can do for a fixed rate fee. And we've always run our business on transparency and communication. So our system works in that we built a flat rate management fee, depending on the type of property. So a single family home costs $99 a month. A duplex, triplex, or fourplex costs $79 per unit per month. And 5 or more units drops down to about $49 per month per unit. You get into bigger multifamily, we develop custom quotes. But what that essentially covers is all of the basics of property management that can be done from behind a computer, phone, text message, FaceTime, all of that. So we triage all of our properties, no matter where they are, to a centralized operation. And that center is in 2 different places right now, but for all intents and purposes, it's centralized. And we can deal with 24/7, 365 tenant communication. So 2:00 in the morning, phone call about someone who lost their keys because they had too many drinks, or a standard issue that comes up that needs a plumber, carpenter, electrician, handyman. All of that is triaged through our system 24/7, 365. And they end up talking to a real person who can triage out the inquiry appropriately. So we're not going to send out a plumber if a handyman can be sent out. And it doesn't really matter if we have to send out a plumber in Kingston and a handyman in Hamilton. That can all be done from that centralized operation. We obviously collect rent on a monthly basis and pay that out to the owners with monthly statements. We handle all of the notices, whether it's notice of entries or N4s or N5s or all of those for you. We handle all of the issues that may come up, as well as potential renovations. So if you've got a vacant unit and you want to do a little, ready to rent reno, you want to do new flooring, new paint, new lighting, we can handle all of that. And we really enable a landlord to be fully passive and really just look at a monthly statement on a monthly basis and see how their property is doing. And we have our qualified trades in every city. And, it is a challenge to find good quality people. And when we find them, we hang on to them. Okay. So we pay them right away, and we essentially reimburse ourselves out of next month's rent. So again, as an investor, you don't even have to deal with bills. And with each contract, we typically set a threshold with which we're allowed to spend. Most property management companies will do this, but you don't want to be bugged for $100 sink repair, but you want to know when the furnace blows and you have to replace that, or the roof is leaking and you need massive repairs. So we just, utilize that threshold, but have transparent communications with our clients at every step of the way to make sure, positive ROI is happening, your goals are being met. And then with the leasing and property management, the leasing division is essentially separate. So when the property management division has a vacancy, we use our leasing team to fill that vacancy. So you have to pay for the leasing service on top of property management, as most, vacancy fillings do cost with any property management company. But you get 10% discount when you are a property management client for the leasing service. But the quality of tenants is the same. We still have that same rigor. We still include you in part of the process throughout the entire journey. We just make it a little bit more passive.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Can I ask, like, roughly, like, let's just say you have a 4-unit building or property versus like a single family, like what does the price point look like
For property management? Yeah, so a single family home is $99 a month for the whole house. If you've got a fourplex, you're kind of on the cusp, so that would be $79 per unit per month.
which
if you hit a
I think is
fiveplex.
pretty good. If it's pretty good, yeah. I mean, especially if you're like at market rents versus a percentage, I think that's that's in line.
Exactly. Yeah, and typically, if you look at it as a percentage, obviously depending on the rents, but it's anywhere from like 2 to 4% depending on the market. Obviously, if you've got a Toronto property, you're going to be down in the 1 to 2%, maybe even. But ultimately, our promise is that fixed rate fee. So when rent goes up next year, our fee is still the same, unless, inflation goes crazy and we have to increase our fees. But that's a business decision. That's something that's dealt with, client to client. It's not just, rent's gone up, or, we've turned over the unit and now rent has gone up, so now we're making more money. So really, from a cash flow perspective, if you have a big portfolio or a small portfolio, it's easier to allocate that amount. And we're transparent in the added fees that come through. When a plumber has to be called out, yeah, it's expensive. Plumbing is expensive these days, but we're transparent in our quotes. We provide you those quotes, you approve them. And so things can get done. And to my point earlier, the best thing you can do for a property, and sometimes it's hard to swallow for all those new investors out there listening, is spend to make sure your tenants are happy. Because if you place a good tenant and then things start going bad and you're trying to pinch pennies here and there, the tenants will get pissed off and they'll eventually leave, and they'll probably leave early. And so what you want to do is make sure your property kind of upholds the standard of that tenant so that they continue to pay rent, so that when you increase rent on them in 12 months time, they're not balking at it because they've never had any problems. They don't have to wait for service calls. They're really happy with the home that you provided to them. And that's, time and time again, and we've managed hundreds and hundreds of properties. As long as we can do things quickly, efficiently, but still cost effectively, tenants are happy, they pay rent, they don't cause damage, and the investor is happy at the end of the day.
That's awesome. So let's just say there is a plumbing issue. Like, is there a cost for you to handle the plumbing issue? Like, obviously there's a cost for the plumber, but like, is there a cost to like make the calls and reach out to plumber and like that time that's spent figuring out who's going to the house?
Yeah, so all of that is kind of part of the standard property management fee that goes out. Okay. If there's a certain level of essentially like general contracting that we need to do, then there's a charge on top of it. But with the standard maintenance call, there's no additional kind of management fee on top of the repair fee. If we need to send someone out, what we've done is, because we have regional leasing specialists, we essentially contract our regional leasing specialists to go out to a property. So let's say, you've got a property that's tenanted and you haven't allowed us to put a pin padlock on the door or put a lockbox on, which is very rare. And the tenants call, or a neighbor calls, and there's a leak. The plumber needs to go out there and can't have access. You're not able to go out there. What we do is we essentially hire a regional leasing specialist to go out there on a very low hourly rate to be eyes on the ground. Okay. And this can happen, for an eviction, it can happen for a fire inspection, but we have the on the ground resources there, but we charge you for them. And what we do is we say, we're going to charge you the $20 or $30 an hour for that leasing specialist to go out there, but you're saving money every month because we don't have a property manager sitting in Kingston twiddling their thumbs waiting for a service call. And we're able to do that because we have volume across the province, but not volume within every single city.
Awesome. Yeah. So I know we're starting these discussions, and so like nothing's ironed out yet, but like obviously with Aisha and I's Midterm rental properties business, I think, we're starting to talk about like what that might look like, because as our business is essentially guest allocation, and we do some Airbnbs, for clients as well as co-hosts and whatnot, but mostly it's guest allocation. And so there's a lot of people that ask about property management. And I think like this is where, I think there is going to be a really cool partnership to be had. Again, details to still be ironed out, but we don't want to, like, I don't want to be in the property management business, right? Like I don't have time, and B, I think it's a loss leader in the industry. I think, where you're probably getting your money from is the leases, which makes sense. And everything else that you have, but you're doing it as a favor for the property management is how I look at it. But with that said, what are your thoughts about like midterm rentals, like those monthly stays now? A lot of my units I'm actually converting, like I have a house in Brantford that's going into the midterm market, short-term market. What does that look like? Maybe just as an overview right now, but we haven't ironed out the details, like I mentioned, so guys don't like hold us to it, but I think it'll be interesting to have you guys on board as the management piece for that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's just a testament to having a brand in the rental space that can pivot within the rental space. Because, a couple months ago, we would say we don't manage midterm rentals. And even from a leasing perspective, we've had a lot of people come our way and say, hey, can you lease out a midterm rental property? I'm gone for 4 months. I need to get it filled. And we say, yes, but it's going to cost you a month's rent. So it doesn't really make sense for them to do that. Just financially, it doesn't make sense. But as we've seen the trend grow, and a testament to what you've done in the education and coaching programs that you have, as more and more people move into the midterm rental space and more tenants become familiar with it and look to it as an option, I think that there's an opportunity. And so we kind of took a few minutes, talked about the opportunity, went back, started to design a system that would make sense, both from a business perspective, a partnership perspective, and looking at the tenants and clients at the end of the day. It has to make sense from their perspective too. It has to make financial sense. It has to make logistical sense. And so there's an opportunity here to really pivot into this space that didn't exist beforehand and come up with a solution that's unique and works for everyone. So for us, you guys are handling the guest placement, which is difficult and time consuming, as we know from leasing, and maybe even more so on the midterm rental side. But you're dealing with high quality applicants who are staying for a shorter period of time, who have more short-term rental type needs. So turnover needs are different in terms of cleaning and restocking. The repair needs are probably going to be a little bit different. There's probably less units that need big renovations, because these are higher end units that have been well taken care of and well positioned for the midterm rental space. So we're looking at kind of another low cost solution where midterm rental clientele can say, I've got the guest placement sorted out with Sarah and her team, Sarah and Aisha and her team, and I just need someone to be there to look after the place. And I think having that security and that sense of, I know the brand that's taking care of it. It's not just a cleaner who I've hired to kind of help out with repairs on top of things, is really going to be helpful. And it's just going to be very simple. It's property management at its basic in terms of cleaning and repairs and maintenance and some turnover coordination, for lack of a better word, in this space. And it can be done at a low cost. And, again, those turnover costs are going to be put through in the same way that we would do so with a long-term client. So we can provide a rate sheet for what a cleaner in Hamilton will cost if the turnover is every 2 months or every 6 months or every year or whatever it ends up being. And so just developing the partnerships, developing the relationships to make sure that we can service a new type of business is something that we can do if we have our eye to innovation and pivoting and an openness and willingness to do it. And it's an exciting opportunity that you brought to us, because most property management companies out there are old school in nature, and they're businesses that have been around for dozens and dozens of years, and the industry has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But ultimately, a lot of people have sat back on their laurels and just said, we're making okay money doing property management. Like you said, we make some money when we have that tenant turnover, and we don't need to dive into this new space. But the new space has opportunities that are there for the picking. And I think a better guest experience, a better client experience from an investor perspective can be had with a management company that looks to create a unique product for that type of clientele.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, details have to be ironed out, but I'll tell you, one of the biggest issues that I have with like even my short-term rentals, as an example, is like, the garbage, right? Like, how's the garbage being handled? The laundry, like, how's the laundry being handled? The cleaners, the replenishments, like, and then just all of that stuff, like that really ultimately as an owner of a property, you're going to want to have either somebody that you trust to do the checks for you. But it sounds like almost like if you're already there from a leasing manager perspective and they're like an hourly type of thing, like it could almost be, again, just thinking out loud here, again, we still have to iron out the details, but they do the checks before, after the cleaning is done, check what replenishments there needs to be, potentially just let the owner know as option one, or option two is, maybe you replenish and then that's where you bill back the guest. So there's so many things, but I'll tell you, like the biggest headaches out there, like aside from like plumbing issues, I literally just had one at the cottage this weekend where the toilet, clogged and the shower was backing up, and like, there's always plumbing issues regardless, but aside from that, it is a little bit of a different game because there is going to be the cleaning, the replenishments, the garbage, and the laundry. And those are usually 4 things that a lot of people have headaches about. So if we can iron out what that would look like on a bigger scale than we can scale, because we want to go across the country as well, and you guys are across the country. But I also think it might be an opportunity for you to take even some short-term rentals from people that are self-managing. And I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying you will or you're not, like that's up to you, your business model. But, there might be something to be said about that, because if you're already out in some markets and you're already doing it, then, maybe that's a different price point at that point in time for short term. But, you could take this whole entire market, short, midterm, and long term, and scale it and have like different arms. And this is where the whole business can pivot, right, into different things. But this is all part of being an entrepreneur, is
for sure. And I think
pivot along the way.
The short-term rental market was very interesting over the last couple of years, because it obviously exploded, 6 months into COVID, and things were going a little bit crazy. And we dabbled in the short-term rental management sphere, but found it was a completely separate, service. It was a different offering. And at that point in time, we were only doing property management in select markets, testing out some systems, doing leasing work. And it was onerous to do, daily or every few days turnovers and cleanings. And I think anyone who's done short-term rentals out there listening, you kind of, your bread and butter is your cleaner. If you have a good cleaner, you have good communication and good systems, it can make or break your rental. And so now we're kind of working backwards. We said no for a very long time, and then we did, long-term, and now we're moving into midterm. So it probably will make sense to do short-term at some point in time, but we just need to make sure, we walk before we run. And I think as a business owner, especially in the tech space and the prop tech space, it's very easy to chase shiny objects. And we've done it in the past. We thought about spinning off a moving company, and then a moving box company, and then a junk removal company. And you see all these opportunities for new businesses, but ultimately we want to make sure that we're not sacrificing the current business, that we have a clear path forward, that from a brand perspective, people understand what we are, because already we do a lot of things and people are like, well, do you do this? And do you do that? And, I don't really understand exactly what you do all the time. So we want to make sure that it's very clear and evident, and that we're providing the best service possible. So I will say, when we can provide the best short-term rental service possible, we will definitely be there. And there's a lot of opportunities in the rental space right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's smart, right? Like sometimes when people grow so fast, so quickly, and then have lots of different offerings, some things can fall through the cracks. And, we're all guilty of it at some point. There's some opportunities and like, you're like, oh, let's just add this to our like offerings. And then, there's learning curves. There's like, I'll tell you as a business owner, there's, some hurdles and challenges, and like you're growing and it's growing pains. And then you like, hire like we have somebody starting next week who I think is going to be amazing to help, with some of the day-to-day stuff and the investor piece of it for the investor onboarding. So like, but growing pains where you're like, don't start a business. Like real estate investing is very different, but from a business standpoint, you are in the business and it is going to be some crazy hours. Like it is like another full-time job in a sense, right? Like your business, your real estate might be a little bit more passive, sure, whatever. But like, in the grand scheme of things, when you're opening up a business, whether it's midterm rental properties, Rent Panda, whatever it is, like it's a lot of hours and a lot of headaches and a lot of, but like, just like you, like I could see one day selling the business off and, making a few mil, and then starting something different. And I don't think I'll ever stop. But I think that's the fun of it, right? Is like you're creating something that didn't exist before. You're building, a company. And I think like sometimes people are entrepreneurs and they want to do something like that. And you're still an entrepreneur if you've got a real estate portfolio. But sometimes I'm like, okay, what else can I do? What other cool business is there?
I think some people are born with that innate desire to fix broken things. And I think when you're in it and you're experiencing it, you see all these little pain points that people experience, and you're like, but I could fix that. I can do something about that. And yeah, picking and choosing what you put your efforts into is hard, because it's easy to burn out, and it's easy to continually lose hairline and just, keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And we did that for a very long time with chasing. But I think, setting a good framework, building a really good team, like you said, hiring a good team member and full teams can make or break a business very, very easily. And that can also help you move on to that next step. So that's what we're excited about doing. I mean, we've brought on some new people that have brought a lot of new insight into Rent Panda, their own landlord experiences, their own regional experiences. And we never want to stop innovating, because I think that's where you really fall off. And so there's fun things coming in the future for sure.
Awesome. These podcasts are supposed to be half an hour, but I think we've talked for an hour. So we're gonna get into our lightning round questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, let's do it. Number 1 was your favorite real estate investing book.
Oh, I mean, Rich Dad Poor Dad was kind of the pinnacle, so I got to go with that.
All right, number 2, not real estate related, but maybe business entrepreneurship related. Do you have a favorite podcast?
Masters of Scale.
Okay.
It's just a general business podcast, or like general show. Yeah, but it's worth a listen to, and they dive in and talk to some really big hitter entrepreneurs about very specific challenges and big people. And I've learned a lot there. My favorite quote from that series was "Let fires burn," because I think as an entrepreneur, you have to realize that there are dozens of fires burning at all times.
Yeah.
And you have to choose, the raging inferno and forest fires, knowing that the little house fire is going to turn into an inferno, and then you can deal with it. So Masters of Scale for sure.
Okay. All right. I'll have to start listening to that. Number 3, what do you do for fun?
Hiking, climbing, biking, anything outdoors.
And now a new baby too, right?
Now a new baby. Yeah. Less fun, more fulfillment, but he takes up a lot of time.
Awesome. Number 4, if you lost everything tomorrow, your real estate, your business, your money, assets, how would you start again?
I would talk to all the people in my life that I look up to, and look for the pain points that they're experiencing in any manner of life, and just look to solve people's problems and start a business that really helped people's daily lives in some way, shape, or form.
Very cool. And last question, if somebody has $50,000, they want to get started, it's broad, so you can take it real estate or business or however you want to take it, and they want to get started, how would you recommend they spend that money?
I would say take at least a third of that money and invest it in yourself. So take some courses in an area of interest, hire a coach, hire a mentor, invest in books, invest in, paid subscriptions for whatever you need to do, but invest in yourself. And then I would say there's a lot of real estate opportunities that people still aren't looking at. I think if you get outside of the majority of people's comfort zones, and maybe pay to talk to people who are really doing things at the cusp of the industry, getting some insight there is really interesting. Looking at people who are investing in Aylmer and Timmins and Kenora. Those are areas that no one is talking about, that everyone's uncomfortable with. So there's definitely an opportunity there, still in Ontario.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Thanks for playing the lightning round, Hart. Where can my listeners reach out and find out more?
Just go to rentpanda.ca, fill out any of the many forms that we've got online there, and reach out, or just shoot me an email at hart@rentpanda.ca. And that's just HART@rentpanda.ca. Okay,
perfect. And mention the podcast where you heard us from. And congrats on all of the success and starting a business and all, handling the fires, like you said, and building a business. Because I remember originally when we talked, I'm like, you know what, you have some holes in the business, and then you fix them. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's talk now. Let's talk.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. Like you reached out, you got the advice, I mean, like you said, you talked to a lot of landlords and you build something of what they're looking for. Now you're like, I think you're gonna take this whole industry to the next level. So thank you for all you do. It's really awesome, and it's a pleasure working with you. And thanks for my tenant screening and everything else that you're doing. So really appreciate it.
Thank you for trusting us and for the feedback. I mean, I think everything that we've built is based on landlord feedback. So if anyone's listening and you're like, I don't want to work with Rent Panda yet, but I've got some thoughts. I mean, that's what Sarah did. So come to us with thoughts, come to us with ideas. We're the ones to execute it. And the industry is going to look very different in 5 years. So excited to be working together with you too, Sarah.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larby. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?